Hey everybody, Johnny Cage here, doing something a little different this time. Today I've decided that I'm going to go through all the games that I have beaten on the Nintendo Switch and kind of grade them on a scale of A+ down to a C-. I didn't feel like I had to go below C- because I don't think I've completed any games that fall into the D category or lower. Also, I didn't do an S rank because I kind of felt that that was unnecessary, but I wanted to give you kind of a quick glance at my thoughts on all the games I have beaten so far, as well as where they all stand in my mind and how it's kind of changed probably for me too. This is completely unscripted, off the cuff. But I do have reviews on some of these individually if you want to check them out on my channel, and some of them I'll be creating reviews for in the near future. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. I didn't really have these in any particular order, so we'll see how this goes. The first game I have is called 60 Seconds. It's sort of a strategy survival game. Think like 1950s Fallout kind of games. The fun part about it is that you have 60 seconds in the beginning of the game to run about your house and try to grab as much crucial, critical, essential items as you can and get them into your bunker before the nuclear fallout begins and your home gets destroyed. So you're going to want to grab your family, you're going to want to grab water, food, maybe the rifle, maybe something like a chess set to keep yourself entertained. The choices are yours. It's a pretty fun game. After you get into the bunker, it's a kind of a turn-by-turn process. You have to ration your food and your water, and certain events will happen, and you'll decide if you want to participate in them or not. But it's a little unique, but certainly, I've only beaten it once. I don't think I'll ever go back to it, but I think for its uniqueness in the presentation, I can put this on as a B-. Also worth noting, I'm going to be trying to go through every game and rank them within the grade level itself, so the top like B- game will be the best B- game, and so on and so forth. Next up, I've got Agelos, or Agelos, I'm not exactly sure how you pronounce it, but this is a great game. I don't have a lot of nostalgia for the Genesis, but it reminded me of playing something like a Monster Boy game on that, or Zelda 2 is certainly another good reference that you could use there. This is one I plan on doing a review of in the future, but it's kind of your standard sort of Metroidvania, but somewhat more linear because the map isn't that big to really consider it a Metroidvania. But going around collecting the classic 4 elements, which will give you unique powers to use throughout your adventure. If you're a fan of Zelda 2 and you haven't picked this one up on the Switch, I'm pretty sure it's available on other platforms, but very, very solid game. One that I got early on in the Switch's lifestyle or life cycle for me, and I'm very happy to have it. So I think I'm going to put this one squarely at about a B. I think it's a solid B. Yeah. Alright, next up we have probably my favorite filler game on the Switch, which is Akane. For those of you who haven't played this, it's usually really cheap. Usually you can find it on sale for just like a few dollars or so. There's not much to it. It's kind of just like a high score hack and slash sort of game. What you see on the screen right now is basically all there is to it. You try to kill up to 100 guys and then a boss battle will appear, but there's also a variety of different swords and guns that you can use, as you have a stamina bar which will deplete the more that you slash at enemies. And then you also have a gun. It's very satisfying to just like stop and pause and let your stamina build back up and then shoot down like a few enemies really quick with your gun. Just very, very cool. I think this game's very simple, but it does what it does extremely well. I'm going to go ahead and give this one a, I think I'm going to put it as a B+. Feels pretty safe there. Next up, one of the big hit games of the year, will probably be a lot of people's game of the year, Animal Crossing New Horizons. This was my first venture into the world of Animal Crossing, and I gotta say, it was pretty good. I did put the full 60 hours into it. I got the quote-unquote ending because there was an actual credits roll, so I felt like I had seen all that there really was to offer in the game, but after that, it sort of lost my attention. Ended up reselling this one shortly after that, but it was fun to get an idea of what these games are all about, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed building up my little world. I thought the villagers could be a little bit more interesting. I felt like we had a lot of repetitive conversations, but I did have a good time fishing and catching bugs for a while there, and I think this is going to be an A+ for a lot of people, but I'm gonna give it an A. I don't think it's gonna be like hold up strong in the A category, but I'm probably going to put it, an A sounds good. I think it's unfair almost to make it less than that. The next game we got is called Bad North. Now, Bad North is a pretty fun strategy game for those of you interested in kind of minimalistic strategy. You basically will start the levels out on a little island, and you'll have your different classes of hero, from the melee fighters to the bow and arrow to the defensive pickmen, and you can choose to mix and match those however you please as you go throughout the game, kind of with branching paths as well. And trying to kill all the enemies before they kill you. You move the camera in like 45 degree motions at a time, so you can kind of see the enemies coming in on their long ships, and then kind of slowing down the game to move your guys into position where you think you need them. It's pretty good. It has a good range of difficulty, has a good learning curve to it as well. I rather enjoyed it. I think this is one I will do as a standalone review in the near future. So I'm gonna go ahead. I think that's gonna be. I'm gonna give it a B+. I think I'll put it ahead of Akane right there. Yeah, that feels good. Alright, next game up, we got one that I reviewed not too long ago called Billion Road. Now, this is a really bizarre game. The best way I can describe it is like Japanese Monopoly. There's a lot more to it than that. If you want to learn more about it, please check out my review on my channel. But it's kind of like Monopoly in that you roll the dice and you run around a board and you're buying up properties. But at the same time, you also have monsters that will join up with you that will provide you with passive abilities, as well as these gigantic monster attacks that will occasionally happen. Pretty fun game. It's a little frustrating, I think, that you have to land exactly on the number of the spot that you need to get to for each goal. That's a little frustrating. You'll have instances where you're trying to land on the spot and you keep missing it, and then someone else comes and steals it from you. That kind of sucks, but you know, it is what it is. So, not a bad game though. I think it's unique enough to warrant, I think, being above a C. I'm gonna go ahead and put this in as the C, as a C-, a B- rather, not C-. Alright, next game on the list, we got Bastion. Bastion's been around for a long time. It kind of put Supergiant Games on the map. I've played a few of their titles, haven't completed all of them, but Bastion is one I had on Steam for a long time, and then I got it on the Switch, and really enjoyed it enough to finally see it through. I tried to pick it up and play it a few times. It might be a little dated, and that's kind of a rude thing to say, but I feel like maybe in the realm of action RPGs there are better options out there nowadays, but it's usually a very cheap title too. Probably can get this one for about $5 or so. Sometimes it's even packaged with the other Supergiant game, Transistor, which is another very popular one. Lots of weapons to use here, a little bit of a variety in like the passive items you can equip as well. I do like the narrator with his deep voice is definitely one of the highlights, and then the way that the world kind of builds around you as you move is also much appreciated. I don't know, this one also feels like it's kind of slipped a little bit, but let's give it a B. I'll put it a B, but not above Agalo, so we'll pop it right there. Alright, next up we've got Bloodstained, Ritual of the Moon, which was the one that was kind of highly anticipated by Iga, coming back to his roots, doing a very Symphony of the Night style Castlevania sort of game. I don't know if this one was for me. I'm not a big fan of Metroidvania games to begin with. This one felt kind of clunky. I think that the people that backed this in Kickstarter got what they wanted out of it, but the controls and the way it all worked, it felt like something that come out of like the mid or late 90s on like the PS1. And if you wanted that, you certainly got it. But for me, it was a little clunky. I think playing it on the Switch did not help at all. That was probably not a great idea. I'm gonna go ahead and give this one a C. Yeah, I don't think I can give it a lot better than that, unfortunately. It just didn't do a lot for me. Next up, we have a game that, if you've played Legend of Zelda, and I'm sure most of you guys have, this game will probably be right for you, and you might not be very familiar with it. It's called Blossom Tales, and you can tell by the art style and the way that the world looks, it's very, very much inspired by Link to the Past. And if you've beaten Link to the Past to death and you've never seen this game or never heard of it, I highly suggest picking it up. It's much easier, I would say, than Link to the Past. The dungeons, there aren't as many, they're not as difficult, but it's got similar weapons, a similar play style to it. It all feels very good. It's definitely a well-made game. You know, the obvious influences there, and they just ran with it. So I feel like I can give this one, put this one as the on probably the C+. That would be good for it. Alright, next up we got a game that I've speedrun a few times. It's a game that I didn't think I was going to like at first when I heard about it, and then I tried the demo and ended up loving it. That's Cadence of Hyrule. Who knows the story as to how these guys were able to get the rights to use Zelda in their game. Obviously these are the creators of Crypt of the Necrodancer, and then combining this with the world of Zelda. It's got some amazing music to it, one of the best soundtracks with the remix to a lot of popular Zelda songs. It's kind of Metroidvania, I guess it's Metroidvania in a sense. Like, the items are around the world are always randomized, you don't know where they're going to be. The game's always the same, basically. I think you could probably beat it in a few hours casually if you want to. It's not that crazy. Also, even though it's a rhythm-based game, I do appreciate that you don't have to play it with the rhythm, because playing it with the rhythm can be very, very chaotic. So I don't know if I would ever want to play it like a lot with the rhythm, but playing it without is a lot of fun. I'm going to go ahead and for me personally, I'm going to give this one an A. I'm going to put that above Animal Crossing too, just because I love it that much. Alright, next game on the list is one of my new favorite sports games. That is Captain Tsubasa. This game just came out a few months ago. And it really is kind of a spiritual successor to the Mario Strikers series. I would still probably say it's like that. I mean, it doesn't have the most perfect mix of simulation and kind of arcadey sports title that Strikers was. It's probably a bit more set in realism. Also, it has a huge influence as it's based off an anime and a manga from the 80s. It's been going strong in Japan still. Very fun game, though. If you're looking for a soccer game that doesn't take itself too seriously, this is a really good title. Lots of fun, created team, creative player mechanics to this. There's a lot of dialogue in the game. I will warn you about that. So if you're not familiar with the anime or manga, as I mentioned, you might get a little, downtrodden in how much there is, because there is a ton. But you can skip by it if that doesn't bother you as well. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to plop this guy in as the first A- here. Alright, next up we got a sequel, if you will, of action RPGs that aren't amazing, but are definitely pretty fun, and that's the Cat Quest series. Cat's Quest 1, and we will get to Cat's Quest 2 right after this, but very fun action RPG game. I like how you're basically running across a world map as you go. Lots of quick, fun quests to them, good magical power-ups. It doesn't have a lot that's going to make this stand out from a lot of other action RPG games, but maybe it's a bit more family-oriented, a bit more kid-oriented. The controls are certainly very simple, not that hard to figure out at all. I'm going to go ahead and plop the first one in as a C+ for me. And then when it comes to Cat's Quest 2, which I followed up with, that one really focuses on the multiplayer of both a cat and a dog. I think it's probably best played with one player playing a melee character and then another player playing as some sort of a mage character. That's the way I went, at least. And that made it more enjoyable. Definitely still fun with one player, as you can switch between one person and another on the fly, but definitely meant for a multiplayer type game. So maybe if you've got a younger sibling, or you've got a small child at home, this might be a good way to introduce them to action RPGs. I'm going to give this one a little bit of a tick up. I think I'll bring it in at a B-, but kind of coming a little low there. Yeah, that sounds about right. Next up, we got probably one of the more popular games of the last decade. Very popular in the speedrunning scene, very popular in general. That's Celeste. Great platforming. I mean, this is like, if you just want a straight up pure platformer, you can't go wrong with this. It's a great learning curve, great challenge curve as you go throughout the game. It starts off pretty easy and gets a little puzzly with the way that you have to kind of tackle the different screens as you go through them. But it's a very solid experience. I know that a lot of people love the story. It kind of speaks to mental health and kind of their all-encompassing mental wellness. It's a little heavy-handed for me personally, but that doesn't detract from the amazing gameplay that's on offer here. So I'm going to go ahead and give Celeste, I think I'm going to give it an A-, but I'm not going to quite go as high as to put it past Captain Tsubasa there. Next up, we've got a game that's visually stunning by Ubisoft, Child of the Light. Very, very beautiful looking, kind of stained glass look to it in this turn-based RPG. It's got some sort of adventure elements to it where you have to find your way around, but it's mostly linear. Very pretty game. I think that its standout feature has got to be the sheer amount of people that you pick up in your party. The skill tree is insanely large. I think it's over 200 skills or something like that you can unlock. And then the way that the timer works for the attacking in battle, you can speed it up or push it back depending on what skills are used, and that can prevent other enemies or your allies from being able to attack. So there's actually a lot more strategy that goes into the battle here compared to a normal turn-based RPG, which is definitely unique, I would say. So I'm going to go ahead and give this one. This one is a. I think maybe I liked it a little bit more than Bastion. I'll give it a B. I'll give it put it right in the middle there. We'll sandwich that one. Next up, we've got an action RPG. You might notice a theme here. It's one of my favorite genres. This one would probably be one of my favorite. Well, it still is one of my favorite games on the Switch. I shouldn't go as far as to say it isn't anymore, but there is a game that very recently came out that's kind of subbed it as the best action RPG in my opinion. But this game is Children of Morta. Very beautiful, kind of minimalistic, pixelated action RPG, much in the same vein as something like Diablo. But what's really fun about this is the sense of family here. Everyone, I believe the name of the house is the Bergsons. And you really feel like they are a true family. They care a lot for one another. You have interactions in between your attempts to go through the caves, as it does have some roguelike elements to it, where you see them bonding and dealing with the issues of this like evil power kind of taking over their land. And it really made you care for the characters a lot, and it did an amazing job of that. And even as you're going through the dungeons, you'll run into little places where you have to help somebody out. Maybe like their wagon like got destroyed and it's being ambushed by bad guys, and you have to help them out. And each character has a good move tree, not excessive in the skills available, but a good enough variety to definitely make each one unique. And they do get exhausted if you use one too often, so there's an incentive to go about using different characters as well. Highly recommend if you haven't checked this one out and you're a big fan of the action RPGs, especially a game like Diablo. Highly recommended. I'm going to go ahead and give this one. I'm going to give this one an A. I'll go right below Cadence. Yeah, that's where I'll put that guy. Next up, I've got the one of my most recent reviews, Chinese Parents. Now, this is a very odd one for me. It's a lifestyle, or not lifestyle, but a life simulator. A game that I usually wouldn't bother to pick up, but my wife actually purchased this one because it looked extremely quirky based on the trailer that you're probably seeing now. It's not really as quirky as the trailer leads on. They do have some fun little mini games in there that are kind of representative of kind of maybe like more so Asian stereotypes. And it kind of feeds into that and exaggerates it a bit, which makes it a pretty enjoyable comedic experience overall. If you're a fan of lifestyle simulators, it's my understanding that this is probably a little bit better than most of them out there on the market. Maybe pick it up on sale, don't get it for full price. It definitely looks like a mobile game when you're in the actual interface of it, and I was surprised actually at first to find out it wasn't a mobile game. But still pretty unique with the way that you get different stat increases by doing these little puzzles, and then how the mini games can affect your relationships over time as you go from literally the moment you're born up until the Gaokao, which is the entrance exam into university. So pretty interesting game. Not one I plan on ever going back to, but I can give this one. I'll give this one a C+, but kind of at the end of it there. Do you like public domain games? I sure do. And that's why I picked up Clubhouse 51 Games. Now, this is definitely a game that you could kind of brush aside as being shovelware. But it is 51 games, and it's done by Nintendo, so it has that kind of a cute, pleasant sense about it. I think when I picked it up, I was excited to play it online, and I thought that a lot of the games being offered here were going to be games I was going to be able to sink a lot of time into. But honestly, online definitely had some lag issues with some of the more skill, speed-focused kind of games, and I don't end up playing as many games on it as I thought I would. I actually was just on vacation, and I played it for a little while, and the only three that I could really get into were Mancala, billiards, and backgammon. It also has chess, chess and checkers. It has other fun games. Great for 2 people, actually. That's kind of one of the downsides, is that it's really good for 1 player or 2 players, but then when it gets to 3 and 4, it has games that support that many, but it really drops off hard, which is very unusual, very unexpected for a game like this. But still, it was a really good offering, I think, from Nintendo. It wasn't a full-price game either. I think it came out at $40, so that's appreciated. I'm going to give this one a B, I believe. I'll come in at the end here on the Bs with that one. Yeah, that feels like a good spot. Alright, it's time for some nostalgia and maybe a controversial decision here, but the next game up for me that I've beaten is the Crash N. Sane Trilogy. This encompasses Crash 1, 2, and 3. I could have technically graded these individually, but I figured I'd just grade them all as a whole and kind of do an average. Honestly, if you were to grade the very first Crash Bandicoot, it probably would be like a D+. I do not think the game has aged at all very well. It's extremely difficult. If you've played it, you might remember the couple of bridge stages in the game that are insanely hard. I've beaten some old school retro games on the NES before that are extremely hard, but oh my gosh, I just remember those 2 bridge levels in the first one being insanely difficult. Then it got to number 2, where it was still pretty difficult, but manageable. Actually, that was probably the best overall mix of game. And then Crash 3 was kind of a walk in the park. I actually didn't even have to use a continue to beat that one. It was pretty easy. So that's kind of the progression of how those games went. I think I'm going to go ahead and give that one a C. I won't give it a C minus. I think that they average out to be a C, but not a very strong C. So yeah, we'll go C there. Next, we got one of the best roguelikes of the past decade, Dead Cells. This is a game that I just wanted to try out for a while. I hadn't had the opportunity to, and the Switch was actually a good opportunity for me to play a lot of like the top tier indie games. We talked about Celeste not too long ago. That I hadn't been able to try in a while, and this game definitely was a lot of fun. It's very fast-paced, which I really appreciate. It's very satisfying to just clear through rooms and enemies at amazing speeds. You have a huge variety of weapons that you'll be able to unlock throughout the game, from swords, light swords, heavy swords, bows of the same varieties, and then shields. And that's kind of where I got stuck up with this game, was that the shield offerings I thought were very odd for this game, because it's very fast-paced and it wants to play very quick, but it was odd to ever use shields. I think there was one that was kind of melee based that I got into a little bit, but I don't know, it didn't really do it for me. And then the longer I played it, there were very particular weapons I would look for, and I don't know, I ended up just finding like a handful that I really liked, and I kind of wish there were more that I would have like gravitated to, but I don't know, it's still a great game. Don't let me sound like I'm making it as a negative, because it's still a very fun game. I just don't go back to it as much as I did when I first got it. So I'm going to go ahead, but I still think this is a top tier game, especially as far as roguelikes are concerned. I'm going to give this one, still going to give it an A-, coming in behind Celeste there, I think. Now we got one of the grand daddies of gaming. We're talking about Diablo 3. The Eternal Collection is what came out for the Switch not too long ago. I had played Diablo 3 when it first came out. I think that must have been like 2011, wasn't it? It was a long time ago. So a lot of it had left my mind how it worked. And I think Diablo 2, I don't want to go too off kilter here, but Diablo 2 is one of the best games of all time. I think that most people that are into action RPGs would agree with that statement. And this one's still very good. I think it lacks a little bit because it doesn't have a true skill tree to it. Everything's kind of tied to your runes that you have, and if you played the game, you know what I'm kind of talking about. It kind of got a little bit too repetitive for me. I mean, I guess the nature of these games is to get a little too repetitive, but as far as it on the Switch and the control layout, I think it's amazing, actually, for being a game that was, got all of its notoriety on computers. To be on the Switch, the controls were great, and I had a lot of time just doing couch co-op with my wife in this one. So I'm going to give this one, I think I'm going to put this one at the top of the B+ list. Yeah, it feels good there. I mean, it's not quite Diablo 2. It's time for some DK action. We got Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. I had put this one off for a long time. It's weird how Nintendo has done this thing where they've been porting over Wii U games, but still pricing them at full price. Kind of a Nintendo thing to do, but just really rude to the consumer. So I finally was able to pick this one up on the cheap not too long ago, and play through it. I wanted to. You know, I've been a big fan of the Donkey Kong Country series. Number 3, not amazing, but the first 2 on the Super Nintendo are very good games for sure. This was alright. The controls were a little weird for me. I had some issues with that. The standout levels were certainly the silhouette levels, and the minecart levels were really good. Actually, they felt like a real step up compared to previous games' minecart levels. But you know, the controls a little annoying. Maybe could have used a little bit more variety in the levels. I remember the final boss of the game being a huge pain in the ass. Like, I must have fought that guy an unreasonable amount of times. So I don't know, not really my cup of tea. I think I'm gonna give this one. I'm gonna make this one the king of the B- games. Yeah, I don't know. The controls and maybe a lack of memorable levels really didn't do it for me there. Alright, so now we have maybe the most bizarre game on my list. This is Donut County. This game was recommended to me as being a hidden gem, a great budget title, compared to Katamari Damacy, which I don't think is a very true statement at all. In this game, you play as a big black hole and the bottomless pit, if you will, and you're just trying to swallow things up, and you have to do it in kind of a puzzly kind of way, where the hole will get bigger the more that you suck up. So you've got to make sure to suck things up in sort of a sequential order. But there's no timer here like there is in Katamari, so you don't really have that feeling of you've got to get things done quickly. You do have to get things done in the right order. Not a lot to remember about this. I think that when I got to the last level of the game, it got a little bit puzzly. I wish the game would have been more like that. If it would have been more like that, then I would have been more into it. There was even a final boss fight, which was kind of cool, because you hadn't seen that throughout the game. But this one didn't do a lot for me. I think I'm gonna go ahead and give this one, bring this one in at the C range. I'll put it above the Crash trilogy though. Time for the big granddaddy of first-person shooters. We're talking about Doom, the 2016 version. This game got a ton of great reviews, and deservedly so. It was a real return to form for the series. I think that it's not exactly my type of game. I don't play a lot of first-person shooters in general, but I wanted to try this one out, especially since they managed to get it onto the Switch for what it is. And unfortunately, I think that was a lot of the downfall for me. This thing runs very slowly on the Switch. The load screens are long and a bit painful. You know, I started to get into it towards the end, though. I started to enjoy some of the upgrades I was getting for the guns. I did unfortunately have to drop it down to an easier difficulty because I was not at all used to playing first-person shooters with dual analog sticks. I think if I played on the computer, I could have held my own a little bit better, but it didn't really do it for me much on the Switch, unfortunately. But still a solid title. Just maybe not the game for me, and definitely not the right platform, I don't think. Those were the big issues. I'm going to give this one a C+. Let me get the king of the C+. So you might be saying to yourself, I'm not seeing anything in the A+ or C- category, so something's got to give here, right? Well, you're absolutely right, and the next game is Dragon Quest XI. I could talk about this game forever. If you ask me about this while I'm streaming, I will talk to you about this game for like 20 minutes straight. I thought I was done in life with the JRPGs. I didn't think I had the time or interest to get into another one. I used to play a lot of them back in high school, back in college, but now as an adult with, you know, jobs and all those other responsibilities that come along with it, I didn't think I had time for a game. But then Nintendo came out with a literally 10-hour-long demo, which you can still play today on the Switch, and man, did I get sucked into this game. It's so beautiful, the colors, the characters, the orchestrated music to it. It doesn't have the most interesting story. The story is your classic, Chosen One is born, and the powers that be don't want him to be born, so you kind of go into that whole biblical Moses story where he gets sent down a river, literally sent down a river, and gets brought up in this small town until he's able to kind of take on the powers, and you find out that there's a real evil presence behind everything going on. But this was a really fun game. I could gush about it forever, all the small details. I wish it had a little bit more side quest stuff to it. It didn't feel like there was a lot off the beaten path that you could do in this game, unfortunately, but I really respected the way that it stuck to it appreciated the player's time, and that's something that I appreciate more and more as I get older. The way that you could speed up battles, that you could quickly teleport to town, that you could quickly heal all your characters, all of that was there and greatly appreciated. So this absolutely for me is going in the A+ category. If you are in that same boat where you don't think JRPGs are for you anymore, or you're done with them, absolutely check out Dragon Quest XI. It is an amazing game. Well, now, how appropriate we go from one of the best games I played on the Switch to probably the most disappointing game I played on the Switch, that in also a Dragon Quest game, Dragon Quest Builders 2. So when I played the demo of this, I had played the demo for 1, and then I found out that Dragon Quest Builders 2 was coming out, and so I waited for 2 to actually buy the game. And I thought this was going to be a great mix of Minecraft and the crafting and building, and then RPG and the way that the combat kind of worked. And I didn't get either of those. I thought that the crafting was pretty close to Minecraft, but the story just forced you to build whatever it wanted you to, and the combat was so bland. It was just swing a sword around, no magic, no cool little abilities, anything. It was so boring, I thought. Unfortunately, I couldn't get into it at all. You do have like a general hub world where you can craft your own little creations if you want, which is appreciated, and I'll give it a little nod there. But still, this was one of the biggest disappointments for me. And it was a very long game too. It was like 60 hours, but I fought my way through it. But I would not recommend this one for either individuals that like Dragon Quest or for those that like Minecraft. Sorry, that's a super controversial opinion, but this one did not do it for me at all. Still going to give it a C- though. It's not like a horrible game by any means. It was just very disappointing. Now we have a series that I got to experience for the first time on the Switch, which is Fire Emblem Three Houses. First time playing Fire Emblem game. My wife has played quite a few of them on the 3DS, so I was excited to get into this one. I appreciated the fact in this that you could grind kind of if you wanted to. I'm not good at tactical games at all. I like them and I try to get into them, but I find that I'm not suited for that type of game usually. But this one was great. I really got into it. I loved that you could recruit a ton of different characters from the different houses and kind of build out different teams. In fact, I wish I would have done more of that. That was the one thing that I wish I would have just, instead of sitting on one team, kind of branched out and gotten more people, so I could have had like a B team on top of my A team and kind of mixed and matched people and learned their stories, because a lot of the fun of the game is building up those relations that they have with one another. It got a little slow in the second half. There's this big event that happens in the game, and if you've played it, you know what I'm talking about. And then there's a big time lapse that occurs. And I felt like after that, it was cool to see everyone older, but I felt like that second half dragged on a little bit more than it probably should have. But still very good. I'm going to go ahead and give Fire Emblem, where do I want to put this one? I'm kind of torn. It's either like a low A or the king of the A minuses. I'm thinking I'm going to give the lead of the A minuses. I kind of wish there would have been a little bit more variety to it, but you know, I think part of it is my fault too. So I'm definitely looking forward to the next entry in the series, though. Hope it comes out on the Switch. Here we got For the King. Now this is sort of a Dungeons and Dragons style roguelike. And what I mean by that is that you'll start off with a party of 2 or 3 people. You can decide what you want to do and travel around this hexagon kind of world. Each of your characters moves individually, which is appreciated as you try to complete quests and you know, beat the campaign that you're on. They're not super long too. They're not like D&D campaigns where they go on for hours and hours. They're probably about, I don't know, 8 to 12 hours maybe, maybe a couple sittings worth. Pretty unique game. I like that, and it has some strong online features too if you want to play with people online. Of 3 different campaigns, I believe, as well as some other side quest kind of stuff. My big issues with the game were that the classes, some of them felt a little bit too similar to one another. When you attack, like you kind of have like these different attributes, and if you share the same attribute as someone else in your group, they felt like pretty similar in the different sorts of moves and abilities that they had, and it felt like, I wish I would have picked someone else maybe. But what's cool is that when you die or win, you'll get these lore points that carry over in the main menu. There's a little store where you can spend them to unlock different locations and different weapons to use in your next outing. So it's a pretty unique game. I also kind of wish though you could move as a group if you were just playing the game offline and not have to move everyone individually, because it kind of sucks when you would get into a fight with just one person up against like a few people, and you can choose to try to run away, but if you get caught up in the fight and you can't escape, you know that person can get killed pretty easily. Although you do get some revives to use throughout the game, but unique for sure. If you like Dungeons and Dragons type kind of games of this sort, check it out. It's definitely, I think, a game that's gotten under the radar, maybe a bit of a hidden gem even. I'm gonna go ahead and give this one, I'll put it at a B. I'll go right here, past Clubhouse games. Next up I got Forager, which, funny, we were just talking about how he disliked the Minecraft aspects of Dragon Quest Builders 2, because this game felt like if you enjoyed Minecraft, this game would be for you. In this game, you're this adorable little guy. You've got these very vibrant colors to this world. As you start to build your own little base camp site, unlocking new skills, and then you'll eventually start to get money where you can unlock different plots of land around you. Ultimately, you're trying to complete a few temples scattered throughout the land that are far off of where you start, as well as building up, your own personal skill base, like I mentioned, and the different tools and structures that you have around you. Very fun game. Very fun just to build your own town while still being very adventurous at the same time. Definitely a game that people should look more into, because I don't think this one got a lot of recognition when it first came out. It does get a little repetitive towards the end. Maybe could use a little bit more substance, but I like this one a lot, actually. I'm going to go ahead and put this one, give this one a B+. I'll come in right under Diablo there. Man, I am a sucker for a good golf game. I really am. Wii Golf was one of my favorite games of the past generation. And Golf Story is the next game on my list. And this was a fun game. It was one that I was looking forward to getting on the Switch, and I got it. It was probably one of the first few games I bought on the Switch. I would say, though, that it does have some good RPG mechanics. It has very good writing to it. That might be its strongest feature, is actually how funny the writing is. But I felt like the actual golfing in it wasn't as strong as I would have liked it to be. I thought it could have been a little bit better. I had just played it recently over at a friend's house, in fact, and we played like a 9-hole round, and I felt about the same way. The putting especially was kind of tricky in the game, but it's a unique game for sure. I mean, I can't think of another RPG mix that's as kind of off the wall as that works as well as this does. I've seen some in the past that have tried to incorporate RPG mechanics into odd genres, but this one went for it, and it mostly succeeded. I just didn't really like the golfing as much, so for me, I think a lot of people are going to put this high up on their list. For me, I'm going to put this one, I'll do a C+. I'll put it right in front of Chinese Parents there. So here we have Gunman Clive. Now this is both Gunman Clive 1 and 2. You can pick up both of these really cheap on the Switch. I think it's been around for a while now. It's got this very unique hand-drawn art style to it. Otherwise, it's just your basic run and gun action platforming kind of game. The first one of it is very easy. In fact, fun little fact, I had the world record speedrun for it on the Switch earlier this year for about a week before promptly losing it and not trying to get it back. Gunman Clive 2, on the other hand, is a much more difficult game. It's got a lot more mechanics in it, a lot more different settings. I think there's some different characters that you can use in that one as well. Definitely a harder, more I don't know if it was more of an interesting game necessarily, but a harder game, certainly. So, and you can pick it up for just like $5. So if you're looking for a little quick-to-play action platformer, I don't think it takes more than maybe 20 minutes to beat the first one and maybe 45 for the second one. So if you're looking for a quick fix in your action platforming, this might be the way to go. I'm going to give this one a C+, I think. I think I'll move it to the head of the pack. Now we got a game straight from hell, one of my new favorites of all time. This is actually strongly in my running for Game of the Year. It probably will be my Game of the Year. This is Hades, also from Supergiant Games, who did Bastion and Transistor as well. I didn't expect this game to be super amazing when it came out. I knew I wanted it as soon as it came out because of its pedigree. But man, oh, I love this game. The controls are just amazing. The way that it incorporates Greek mythology into it with the different upgrades. Man, this game really hit the mark. I don't think I played an action RPG this fun in a long time. If you haven't checked out my review for it, go ahead and check it out. It was a game that I immediately knew I had to do a review on. And like I said, if you like action RPGs, this is absolutely a game that you must play. And if you like Supergiant games, this is also a must play. Top tier for sure. I'm going to put this one A+, not as high as Dragon Quest XI, but definitely an A+ game. Going back to our talk of the best games of the past decade as far as indie games go, that is, we got Hollow Knight. I'm not a big Metroidvania fan. I've mentioned that already before. I have a hard time getting into those. I think it's a lot of just like the backtracking, the frustration of not knowing where to go next. But I love exploring in games though, just the same. And I really loved how organic the exploration in Hollow Knight was. How I felt like whenever I was starting to get a little bit lost, I would uncover something like instantly. It felt like as soon as that hit, I would find something. It's a very hard game. It's extremely difficult. It does not hold your hand. It will beat the heck out of you from the moment it starts. But if you can see past that, and it's very dark atmosphere as well, although it's kind of cute at the same time. You'll come across a lot of people in this world that aren't all enemies. They're just like, you'll find the cartographer guy who will give you a map, or you'll find someone who's a little shop. It's nice to see a game where not everyone is immediately someone that wants to destroy you, although a lot of the times that is the case. But this is an absolute must play, and it really changed my view on Metroidvanias. And now I think going forward, whenever someone has a Metroidvania they want to recommend to me that they say it is a must play, I'll definitely take a deeper look at it than I would have before. This is absolutely A+. I think I'm gonna put it just a little below Hades, like it's just a smidge below Hades. Alright, we got the controversial alarm going off now. My next game is Horizon Chase Turbo. I have seen this as the #1 game on a lot of top 10 racing lists for the Switch, and it's a beautiful looking game. I love the low poly art style to it. I think that that's something either you love or hate, and I love that look. Unfortunately, I had 3 really big flaws with this game that I can quote verbatim because I felt like I've had to defend myself against a lot of people with this game. One is that it tries to assist you in the turning, and the game does move very fast, but when you're going around a turn, and this game is meant to play like Rad Racer or Outrun, the computer moves your car as well as you moving it, and it can be really hard to get around cars when you're trying to get past them on a turn. Another thing was that you have an upgrade system that turns out to be pointless because by the end of the game you just have all the upgrades anyway, so it gives you this false sense of choice that I really just didn't appreciate, to be honest. And then lastly, it had this sort of way of the track design needing you to get the gas canisters to be able to complete races most of the time. I don't think that was true in every race, but it forced you to not only be skillful with racing, but then also memorize the track layout as far as where all the gas canisters were in some of them, and I just found that to be incredibly frustrating. I hate it when I have to do more than just race in a racing game, so I don't know. This game just did not do it for me. It's definitely, unfortunately, a C-. Not as bad as Dragon Quest Builders. I will give it that. It didn't disappoint me that much, and it didn't eat up as much of my time. Next up, how appropriately, we move into Hot Shot Racing, which is another low poly art count game that I just recently did a review on as well, and this one for me was so much more enjoyable than Horizon Chase Turbo was. I felt like there was some rubber banding with the racing, but I didn't feel like it ever cost me a race. You know, it wasn't as bad as some of the more notorious rubber banding games. You know, certainly F-Zero comes to mind. I don't feel like I ever lost a race because of the rubber banding. It still came down strictly to my skill. The cars were able to move about the track very easily. The drifting was very easy to pull off. Every racer had 4 different style of cars to play through and pick out and kind of figure out what was the best fit for you. I did wish that during the Grand Prix mode you could have switched cars depending on the track, so that you could have kind of better strategized. But like once you had a car, you were locked into that throughout the whole Grand Prix. So that's one of the things I would have changed about it. But otherwise, still a very good game. A game that I've picked up since the review too. I think I'm going to go ahead and put this in the middle of the B+ category. Alright, let's get back to some of the first-party Nintendo games. Now we're looking at Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, very much desired game to be remade, certainly. The original coming out on the Game Boy long ago, and certainly it deserved the facelift that it got. It was a shame that they couldn't really quite figure out how to make the game not stutter a bit when you were changing up screens. It did have a little bit of a frame rate issue there. That was one of the bigger issues with the game that I had personally, but I think people like this game because it's just a really compact Zelda adventure. It's not, I forget exactly how long it was, but it doesn't seem as long as most of the other Zelda titles, but it still has all of the bells and whistles that you would expect to come with a Zelda game, which everyone kind of loved. I played through it and I enjoyed every bit of my experience with it. They tried to do this build your own dungeon simulator in it, which kind of might be as close as we ever get to a Zelda Maker game, but I don't know, that kind of fell flat for me. It was more of just like a build a dungeon as a puzzle, and then the playing through it part was kind of just didn't matter at all. You know, it was more of just the puzzle of having to build it in a certain way that the computer decided you have to build it in. But still a fun game. After I beat it though, I just didn't really see myself going back to it, so I ended up trading it off. But still very fun. It's a great Zelda game, there's no denying that. I'm going to go ahead and put this one, I'll put it in the A- category. I'll put it right below Fire Emblem. Now we got the first Nintendo Switch game review I ever did on my YouTube channel, Lonely Mountains Downhill. This is a fantastic game. There's not much to it, but what it does perfectly. You are literally just going down a mountain. There's no crazy soundtrack to go along with it. You just have the sound of the wind and the birds and just general nature. You can play this any way you want to. You can play it super easy, just have a casual bike ride through this low polycount world. Low polycount seems to be the theme right now in the games I'm going through, but still very beautiful. Or you can go extremely quick and try to get some sort of a world record or kind of speed run the game if you want. Whatever suits you. This game is there to make you have whatever experience you really want to get out of it, quite frankly. I do wish they would have done something like a ghost mode maybe, so you could have seen the path you had taken before if you're trying to beat your best time, or maybe a mini-map so you could have seen what the track looks like to try to find shortcuts, because that's one of the big fun parts of the game, is going off the trail and trying to find shortcuts that will get you through the checkpoints faster. But highly recommend it. If this game looks interesting to you at all, definitely take a look at it, because it might be a hard sell for some, but it is absolutely an amazing game. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give this one an A-. I'm actually going to give it a pretty dang high rating here. I think I'm going to go right there, right next to Link's Awakening. Now we get to the slew of Mario games, starting with Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe. I kind of got this on a whim very early on when I got the Switch. I figured I just need Mario games, I need first-party Nintendo games. Let's go with Mario. You can't go wrong with Mario. Unfortunately, this is probably about as close as you can go with getting wrong with Mario. And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with the game, but it's just not very fun. It's an extremely forgettable outing. I mean, even comparing this to like Mario 1, Mario 3, Mario World, some of those original Mario games, it really feels like this was just copy and paste of the most generic parts of any of those games. Just not a ton of fun to be had here. I genuinely, as I'm talking about right now, off the cuff, I can't remember a very memorable part about it. The only part I do remember was the Starry Night Van Gogh level, and I think that's what most people remember about this. And that was a cool level, but otherwise, not very good. I think I'm gonna go ahead and put this one. In fact, I'm gonna give it a C. I'll go above. I'll make it the King of the Seas. There you go. All right, let's keep it going with probably the most popular game on the Switch, to be honest with you. I think this is always a top 10 seller anytime I look at the charts, and that's Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. People were talking about this year there being a new Mario Kart game because it's been a while, but honestly, as long as this one keeps on selling, why fix what ain't broken, right? This is an amazing game. Mario Karts always have been. There have been some hits and misses, but generally they've all been very good titles. I haven't played all of them. I played the original, of course, 64, and a bit of Double Dash on the GameCube. But then after that, I stayed away from them for a while. I mostly just moved to PC gaming for a long time after that, and then I picked this one up because I felt like it was kind of an obligatory game to have, and it really is. I love playing this when I don't have anything better to do and I want to do something more in the long term. Like I mentioned Akane earlier as being one of my favorite filler games, but if I want kind of like a more long-term filler game, especially when I'm streaming and I don't know what to stream, this is always a good game to throw on. You can usually find people to play with, or just makes for good watching and good playing. I feel like I have to give it an A. I'll go towards the lower end, but I think it deserves to be an A. Keeping with Mario, next up we got Mario Maker 2, and this is a game that I didn't know that I was going to like right off the bat. I felt like it might not really be for me. In fact, I don't even think I got it when it first came out. I might have, but I wasn't thinking about getting it immediately. But I'm glad I did, because I actually really got into this. Both me and my wife, we really got into making our own levels. And I'm a big fan of speedrunning. If you ever watch me streaming, usually I'm speedrunning old school games, and I really got into speedrunning different people's stages. I even got the achievement for having like 100 world records or something like that at one point. It just became kind of a fascination with me to try to beat other people's levels as quickly as possible. And yeah, I kind of wish that they would have held off on the Mario Maker World thing that they just recently did. I felt like the game had kind of already passed its prime by the time they came out with that, I don't know, expansion to it. They maybe should have held off on that until Mario Maker 3 inevitably comes out. But really, really fun title. I mean, if you're going to buy a Mario game, it should probably be this one, because there's just limitless potential with this game, from both the creative side and the playing side. Although the multiplayer, I will say, not a big fan of that. I mean, the Switch's multiplayer does have its issues in general. Definitely prefer this to be a solo player experience. But all that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm still gonna give this an A+. Maybe it surprised me, and that's why I'm giving it such a high rating. But I'll go on the low end of the A+ for this one. Alright, now we get to the big Mario game, Mario Odyssey, of course, the one that people were super hyped for. It looked like kind of the spiritual successor to Mario 64, and people were all over it. I didn't get this one right away when I got my Switch. I held off a little bit, I think maybe a few months before I ended up picking it up. I didn't know how much I would really like it, but at the same time, if you're going to be a Switch owner, you might as well own all the first-party games, or at least play all of them. I mean, what's the point otherwise? I really enjoyed it, my time with it for the most part. I do remember towards the end of it handing the controller off to my wife a few times, because I was just kind of getting a little bored with it, a little bored with the repetitive nature of things. I think I like the way that Mario 64 works a little bit more, where you have like all the levels only have like 8 stars in them, where this one has tons, like 30 plus moons in each world that you have to pick up and gather. I'd rather have less. I think less is more. And that was something that I appreciated more about the older Mario games. But this was not bad by any means. New Donk City, I think, is everyone's kind of favorite level. Going through that 2D portion where you're going through like the Donkey Kong levels while they have that song being sung by Paulina going on in the background, that's certainly a standout moment. Definitely going to give this one an A. I think for me it's going to fit right in the middle there. Yeah. Alright, the last Mario game for me is Mario Rabbids Battle Kingdom. And this was a surprisingly good game. I got this one, again, early Switch game for me. Got it not going in with a lot of expectations. Again, I love tactical games, but I'm not very good at them, so I didn't even know if I was going to beat this game, but I also thought it might be more of like a baby's first tactical game. And I was pleasantly surprised with actually how it worked. It wasn't super easy, but it wasn't incredibly hard either. It definitely fell somewhere in the middle. I think by the time I got to maybe like the third world, I was having to do some levels over again, but it wasn't frustrating at all. It was, I knew it was my own fault for what was happening as far as losing levels. I wish that you would have gotten the cast of characters, the full cast of characters early on, because I think the team that I ended up settling with, which I believe was Mario, Rabbid, Peach, and Luigi, if I remember correctly. I think you get all 3 of them pretty early on in the game, and then there were some that you got at like towards the very end. And I hate it when games do that, and they just give you the characters way too late for you to want to invest in them. That was one issue that I had, but otherwise, a very fun game. I don't know that I'll go back to it ever, but if you see this one on sale, I think it's a for sure pickup. I'm going to go ahead. I think I'm going to go ahead and make this one. Yeah, I'll move it ahead of Diablo. Make this the lead B+ game. Now, who doesn't like Marvel, right? I mean, they're on top of the world these days. Finally, just had the end of the Infinity War crazy mess that was 10 years in the making. And out of nowhere, we get Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, which was like, holy shit, really? We're still making these kind of games? I used to play the X-Men Legends games a lot back on the GameCube, and I love those games. There's not much to them. Fun action RPG kind of games with your favorite superheroes involved in them. This one was pretty good. I wish that they would have had more in the way of special skills. The characters didn't feel super unique. For instance, I remember like Captain America. He had like a skill that he had that would kind of like rally everyone on the team and kind of like support them. I think it gave them like an attack and defense boost. I wish people would have had more skills like that, rather than everyone having just like these crazy offensive moves. You know, I think like a couple people, Doctor Strange and I think one other, could heal people, which was a unique skill to have. I wish you would have seen more of that, a little bit more variety, but still, I mean, this game felt true to any of those old style Alliance kind of games or X-Men Legends games. So definitely got what I wanted out of it. I'm going to go ahead and I think I'm going to put this one, where does it go? Probably, let's put in the B, yeah. I'll even put it ahead of Clubhouse Games. Yeah, I'll put it right there in the B list. Now, if you've been following my channel for a while, or you watch me stream, you know I'm a big fan of the classic Mega Man games, especially on the NES 1 through 6. And Mighty Gunvolt Burst is very much in the same vein as those. It's definitely a good old Mega Man game. It does have that guy from Mighty Number 9. I forget his name. I think most of us have at this point. But you don't have to play with him if you don't want to. You can play as another guy. But what makes this game unique is that as you go through it, you'll be able to buy upgrades that you can choose to have on your character to kind of help or hinder you even. It sort of sets the difficulty for the game. You can make it so that your projectile that you shoot is really large, that it does more damage, that kind of stuff. Or you can make it so you're a bit weaker, if you so choose. It doesn't have a lot more variety than that. The level design lacks a little bit of inspiration. It's not going to be like a mind-blowing experience, but I would say if you get this game, if you can find this game for under $10 or so, it's worth picking up, especially if you like the classic Mega Man style games. I'm going to go ahead and give this one, I'll give it, yeah, I'll put it at the top of the C+ category, I think, right there. Next up, I got Monster Boy, and this is definitely not the most perfect game for me. I mean, it's part of the Monster Boy series that was originally on the Genesis, and I did play the demo of it, and that kind of hooked me in to wanting to pick up the full game. It's somewhat of a Metroidvania, although it might be a little too linear to call it a true Metroidvania game. As you go through it, you'll collect I think it's 4 or 5 different guys you get on your team outside of your main blue-haired hero that you have, and then they all have their unique power to basically help you with the next temple puzzly area that you have to go through. Although as you get to the end, I remember there's this blue lizard that you get. I think it's the last guy that you get, and he is just insanely good. He has his projectile, fire breath, and he can fly, and there's really not much of a reason to go with anyone else other than him towards the end, unless you absolutely have to switch over. But I don't know, it's kind of like a Mega Man in that sense, where you have different powers that you switch to when you need them. I just found that a lot of them I didn't want to switch to unless I absolutely had to. I don't know, it just felt a little lackluster for me, but I think that this one really pries on nostalgia, and if you had played the original ones on the Genesis, you're going to love this game. Just not exactly for me, not exactly my cup of tea. I'm going to go ahead and rank this one. You know what, I think I'm actually going to probably give this one a C. Probably come in right under Mario Deluxe, yeah. Speaking of something a little Zelda-like, we have Moonlighter up next, which is sort of a Zelda game, but also sort of like a shopkeeping game. At the same time, I don't know what shop-wise to compare it with, but the way this game works is your main character will go out every night into these very Zelda-like dungeons. You'll fight enemies, and you'll just try to grab as much loot as you can before you leave the dungeon. You decide to leave, or I think if you get killed, you still retain a certain amount of the equipment that you picked up. And then during the day, you have a shop that you manage where you put everything that you picked up out on the showroom floor for people to come in and buy, and you kind of have to figure out what prices work best. For certain people, you have to like stop thieves that would come in and try to shoplift from you, which is kind of a nice, neat little feature. And then you're also building up your town at the same time and finding people that will help you upgrade your equipment to go deeper into the dungeons you're in or into the next dungeon. Pretty unique game. If you like Zelda games and you're not familiar with this one, definitely take a look at it because it's kind of fun. The shop mechanic is really cool to start with, but then after a while you have a notebook, a ledger of the different prices for items, and you'll find out exactly what you have to price stuff at. And then it just kind of becomes this rinse and repeat process of, okay, this sells for this sells for this, so on and so forth. And it kind of takes a little bit of fun out of that aspect of it. But the dungeons are really good. Some good combat in there. So still a pretty decent recommendation. I'm going to go ahead and give this one... let's see, I think I'll go ahead and... yeah. Does it go above Agelos? I think it'll go with B, just below Agelos there. Alright, it's time for the obligatory anime game, and for me that is Naruto Ninja Storm 4. And this I kind of got on a whim. Honestly, I was just looking for a fighting game, and I really wanted a Street Fighter game when I picked this up, but there's no newer Street Fighter games on the Switch. They only have the older ones, so I was like, you know what, I liked Naruto back in the day. Back in high school, I watched anime a bit, and into college even a little bit. But I was like, okay, yeah, we'll try this out. This could be fun. I had one of the Clash of the Ninja 2 I had on the GameCube, so I'm like, I know this a little bit, so this could still be fun. It does have a gigantic cast of characters. There are seriously like over 120 characters, although some of them are variations of the same person, which is, you know, a little bit of a cop-out, unfortunately, but still a lot of variety in the characters. The problem is there's not a lot of variety in the moves. I think that each character only had like a couple unique moves to them, and other than that it was just kind of doing combos. A lot of the strategy comes into having a three-person team and being able to bring in assist people and other people to tag in and tag out and do these crazy ultimate combos, which is something I couldn't really get into, but I did like just kind of playing around with all the characters and finding out which one worked out for me. I mean, this isn't one of those games that you see at EVO, and I think there's probably a reason for that. But it was still fun enough. I think I'm going to go ahead and give this one, I'll give this one a B-. I'll put it at the top of the B-, because it's certainly a well-made game. You have to be a very big Naruto fan to really appreciate it. If you know me, you know that I'm a big fan of deck building in both the video game and board game genre. That I've been playing Magic the Gathering for many years and still play it today. And this game is one step from Eden. And if you like deck building and you like the Mega Man Battle Network games, well, this is literally the perfect game for you. I didn't see many people talk about this game when it first came out, and it's not the easiest game in the world to pick up and play. There's a huge learning curve with it, I would say, in that you're building a deck of cards, much like Slay the Spire, for instance, but you're also having to move around on this grid at the same time, so you have to do this juggling act of finding the cards that you want to use in the particular battle against the particular opponent you're facing, but then also trying to not get killed by your opponent at the same time. So it does take a while to get good in this game, but it is pretty rewarding when you do get good. It's very fast-paced. So I would say just know going into it that you're probably going to die a lot before you actually make it to like the boss and actually kind of beat the game for your first time. But there are a lot of characters to unlock. There's a lot of combos in the decks that you can build. I believe when you start a match, you can choose like the different style of cards that you want to appear more often than others. I think that's the way that it worked. It's been a while since I've played this one thoroughly enough to be able to tell you for sure. But if you like deck building games and you're looking for something different, and you happen to also be a huge fan of Mega Man Battle Network, this is 100% the game for you. I'm going to go ahead and I think I'm going to give this one, I'll put this at the low end of, do I want to go that high? You know, actually I don't really know if I want to go that high. I think I'll go on the lower end of B for this one. Yeah, I was thinking B+, but no, I think it's a B. It's maybe a little bit too difficult, so B it is. I am not lacking in controversial decisions here. Next up we got Ori and the Blind Forest, and this is a game that people love with a capital L, I would say. And I think I don't love it as much, and I think the reason for that is that I played this game maybe 2 weeks after I'd beaten Hollow Knight, and I think that this game and Hollow Knight are very similar. In fact, I played the demo for Ori and thought that it felt a lot like Hollow Knight, which is why I picked it up. And it does a lot more in the platforming genre than Hollow Knight does, but I didn't like it overall as much. I think when you talk to people about this game, a lot of them will bring up those escape sequences that you have after the boss fights, and I think there are 3 of them in total in the game, and they are amazing. Don't get me wrong, those are some very, very crazy sort of edge-of-your-seat sort of moments when you're trying to escape from something, some sort of flood or fire that's about to engulf you. Very cool. The platforming is good. I didn't like the way how Ori was really floaty. I felt that he was a little too floaty. just in general. I did like that the attack button, it homes in automatically on your enemy, so you don't have to worry about that so much. It really does, the game does want you to stick to the platforming, and I've heard that the sequel for this is amazing. It's so much better than the original, so hopefully I pick that one up around the holidays and give that one a playthrough. But the original one, fortunately, just did not quite do it for me as much. I think looking back on it, I enjoy it more than I did at first, but I think I'm gonna give it like, I think I'm gonna put it somewhere in like the, you know what? Actually, I'll put it at the top of the B category. Yeah, I think it's gonna be a little. I think a lot of people would put it higher than that, but that's just kind of where I land on it. Time for another nostalgia pick with Star Wars Racer. I just call it Star Wars Pod Racer. Originally came out for the N64 after Star Wars Episode 1. And man, this game, I don't know what to say about the remake of this. On the N64, it's a really fun game. A lot of people have good nostalgia for this one, but the remake just felt odd. And I was talking to a buddy of mine when I streamed it one night, and we were trying to kind of figure out what was a little off about it. And I think it might have something to do with the frame rate, how frame rates have improved over time, especially on high definition televisions, and then how controllers have improved on analog sticks from the N64 to where we stand now. It just felt a lot easier. I felt like you were either, to kind of quote Ricky Bobby here, I felt like I was either in first or last in any given race. There was no in between. I either got first or I just got complete last. And more so than not, I got first. In fact, I think it only took me like 3 hours to beat this game the first time I picked it up. And I was like, wow, that was surprisingly easy. They definitely could have improved this with some online multiplayer. If they would have been able to incorporate that, it would have been amazing. But as it stands, it just has local co-op, which is fine. But the original had that as well. So I don't think I can do a much better than maybe give this one. Yeah, I don't think I can do any better than give this one a C. I'll bring it to the top of the C's though. There's still some strong nostalgia there for me. It's time to catch 'em all with some Pokemon. That's right. Pokemon Shield is the one that I played. The wife had Pokemon Sword. So that's the one I'm looking at. Not that it really matters that much. This was my first time playing Pokemon since Pokemon Silver. I had played that. I never beat it all the way through. I was getting a little bit older by the time Pokemon came around. I did have Blue. I beat Blue thoroughly. I'm very knowledgeable on the original first gen of Pokemon. And I did play Sapphire on an emulator, but I don't know if that really counts because you can speed up an emulator, so you can kind of like grind to level 100 pretty easily. So this was my first outing legit playing a Pokemon game in a long time. I had no familiarity with any of them in between, so we got right into this. I was looking forward to trying out a bunch of all new Pokemon. There was some stuff I liked about it that I think maybe some people didn't like as much, which was how easy it was to level. You do have like the experience all for all of your Pokemon, and I think that's on whether you like it or not. It felt kind of weird too not having the Elite Four at the end of the game, even for me, and I'm sure that felt the same way for a lot of like true hardcore Pokemon fans, but it felt a little lackluster when you beat the game. It's like, it felt like there should be a little bit more, because it just felt like a normal gym fight, to be honest. Didn't ever feel like I was really at risk of dying at any point, really. I mean, type advantage was still important in this game as it is in any Pokemon game, but it wasn't that big of a deal. The wild area is where this really shined. Being able to play it with my wife and going to the wild area where we could tackle these giant Pokemon together was really cool. It was a good way of incorporating some multiplayer into it. It was also an area that you could go in, you could train up a particular type of Pokemon, because there were different designated areas where you could find different Pokemon types, which I thought was a really nice touch to the game. So definitely not amazing though. I kind of beat the game and was like, shrug shoulders. That's it kind of thing. But it wasn't bad. I know I won't go back to it, but let's see, where would I rank it? I think I'll still give it a B-. I'll put it above 60 seconds. I'll put it right there in the B- category. Do you like trains? You know what I do. Not really, actually. I just happened to find a train game that I really liked and ran with it. This is Railway Empires. It's probably better played on a PC, as a lot of kind of strategic games like this are. The control layout is kind of just more better suited for a mouse and keyboard, I think, than an actual controller. But man, I got into this. Like, when I saw people talking about this and they got some really good positive reviews on the Switch, I was like, man, I bet if I pick that game up, I'm really going to enjoy it. and it did take a little bit of getting used to, as far as like understanding like legitimately how trains work, with learning how signals work, so you can have multiple trains on the same track, understanding that. But it's a lot of fun just building up your own like train route, and then giving you little tasks that you have to accomplish every couple of years to complete the campaign. And then you have competitors that you can choose to have on and off the map if you're doing like a freestyle kind of playthrough. Really fun game. I just got really into this. It definitely isn't like a set it and forget it kind of game where you can play it super chill, because you do have to be aware of what's going on constantly, with like a train maybe getting robbed, or trains needing to be put out of commission and then bringing on new ones. Stuff like that happens quite often in the game, especially as you go through it. But still really fun strategic game. If you have played any sort of like simulation type games, like a Civilization or something of that sort, and think this might do it for you, give it a shot. It's pretty expensive at full price, but on sale I think you would really enjoy it if you've had a lot of fun with other strategic simulation type titles. I'm gonna go ahead and give this one I'm gonna give it, you know what, I'm gonna give it a very high rating, actually. Surprise everybody. I'm gonna give it top tier, a B+. We got a flying game up next, Red Wings Aces of the Sky. Did a review on this one not too long ago. This was pretty fun, set in World War I, I believe, out on the European front. The whole game takes place around the Red Baron. You're either on the Axis or Allies side, but it still all revolves around the Red Baron and in his life. And it does have a pretty decent story to it, because it's not just that one side is the bad guy and one side is the good guy. It actually talks about people's relationships that they build up with one another, the camaraderie, as well as the admiration they have for even their enemies on the other side, as this was a very dangerous thing to be doing back in the day. But it has some fun controls to it. You know, it's like the quick 180-degree turnaround. You can actually, if you shoot down enough planes, if you get close enough to a highly damaged plane, you get the ability to shoot a pilot with your handgun. Just pull out the handgun, a little cutscene goes by, and you take them out. And it does have a good level of difficulty to do it. It starts off pretty easy. The levels go pretty quick, but then you find out that, oh wait, this game's not messing around, as it starts to get towards like the last quarter of each of the campaigns. And each campaign is a little bit different as well. There's not as much to look at, because you're usually up in the clouds, but there are a couple of bombing missions as well. There's a mission I remember where you're like in the desert in the Middle East, and you have to deal with sandstorms, which is a nice little touch. Not exactly Star Fox caliber. Not probably gonna win any awards either, but I had a lot of fun with this game. I think I'm gonna give this one. This one is probably going to be maybe I'll put it in the front of the B minuses. Yeah, that feels about right. Let's do that. Next up, we got Risk of Rain 2. Risk of Rain 1 was a super popular, very minimalistic looking roguelike game that came out quite a few years ago. This one takes that formula and really shifts it around. This time it's a third-person 3D game. It still has all of the bells and whistles that the original game had, as far as getting upgrades for your character, having a variety of different characters. As you go through these worlds, taking down enemies that will spawn frequently, and killing them, getting money to find little loot boxes that are scattered about, and upgrading yourself. Then ultimately you'll find these kind of like monolithic columns where you'll summon a boss monster and take them down. What makes this game kind of unique too is its difficulty meter. It has a difficulty meter that just keeps on going up as you go through the game, which is kind of weird. It's like you don't set the difficulty, it's just judged by however long you take to go through the levels, which is pretty odd, but fun game. Yeah, very fun to play multiplayer wise too. It takes a while to get into. This one does have a bit of a rough learning curve. You're probably gonna die in the first level, probably, I wouldn't be surprised, like a dozen times before you actually beat the first level. But once you figure out how this game works, you figure out a character that works for you, you're gonna have a lot of fun with it. So especially if you played the first one, this is definitely probably an automatic pickup. I'm gonna go ahead and put this one, put it on the lower end of the B+ scale, put it like right there. Now we got Shantae and the Seven Sirens. This is my first time playing a Shantae game. I've heard a lot about them over the years, and I wanted to just give one a try to see what it was all about. I'm not sure if all of them are Metroidvania style, but this one certainly was. It did have some linearity to it as well. I don't think you had to do as much backtracking in this as most Metroidvanias, which I feel like I've said a few times throughout this list, but I've always appreciated that when you don't have to deal with that frustration. This game is very, very similar in look and tone to Monster Boy. In that you'll go through one level, you'll get a new power, and you'll use that power to go through the next level. And like I said, both of them are kind of Metroidvania-like games, so it's also very similar. I didn't love the game, unfortunately. It does feel like this is going to mesh right up there with Monster Boy, where it was okay, but it wasn't an amazing experience. I have heard that this is one of the better Shantae games, which doesn't give me a lot of hope for future Shantae titles, but I mean, maybe if there's another one that gets highly recommended, I would give it a try, but this just felt like a very cookie-cutter Metroidvania-light kind of game that I don't think I would ever, look at picking up another one of, or playing again, to be honest with you. I'm going to give it, I'll put it in front of Monster Boy, though. Put it right there in the C rank. Next up we got Sparklight, which is a sort of just adventure-y kind of game. I feel like I heard Zelda getting thrown around a lot when this game first got shown off, and it's got a pretty good art style to it, but it doesn't really have a lot of the Zelda qualities to it necessarily. It's a bit roguelike. As you go through these worlds, you're gonna die quite a bit before you encounter a boss that you will hopefully defeat. In which case you'll move on to the next world. You also have this little hub area where you can take the money that you pick up in between runs to upgrade yourself through this badge system. I felt like this is, I don't know, a very, very bland game. I just mentioned like Shantae feeling like a cookie cutter game. This one felt even more so. Like, it's almost like the standard definition of a roguelike kind of game. It does have some nice animation to it, as you can see from the trailer, but the game just did not offer very much at all. There were a ton of other games like I would probably recommend before this one. I'm unfortunately going to bring this one at a C-, but I guess if it means anything at all, I'll put it in the front of the C-. Now we get to the SteamWorld games. I played a few of them. I didn't really know about them at all until I got a Switch. I'm not sure if they're even really... They must be available on Steam and other places as well. This first one, SteamWorld Dig 2, which is a pretty fun sort of adventuring kind of game where you will literally be digging. You just dig down a mine shaft. And you want to just uncover different locations along the way. You'll go into different caverns, find loot, go back to town, upgrade yourself, go back in, and eventually you'll be able to afford different little trinkets and abilities that will lead you to the next area. There's not a ton to this one, but it did have some pretty fun boss fights and some pretty good puzzles in it, as well as some pretty unique upgrades. Eventually you'll get like a jetpack, so you'll be able to fly around the mines much more easily than in the beginning. I think in the beginning you can't even jump. So you're just constantly having to be very careful with where you dig, but fun game. If you're into games like Spelunky, this is definitely right up that same alley, and I would recommend giving it a try. Definitely does what it does well, which is true for all the SteamWorld games. I'm going to go ahead and give this one, we'll throw this one on the B list. We'll go right in between Marvel and Clubhouse. Following that up with SteamWorld Heist. Well, what's unique about this one is that it's a 2D tactical game, which you just don't see hardly at all. I mean, if you do see a 2D tactical game, usually the guys are still on a grid, but here it's literally 2D, and you're going to have your team of robots, your kind of robot pirates, think like Firefly, basically, and you're going to be going from level to level, trying to recruit new guys, pick up new weapons, and complete the missions. There's some good replayability here, in fact, now that I think about it. There's a lot of characters and weapons that you can mix and match to go through it. And you don't see the 2D style very much. There's a lot of ricocheting bullets. You can pull off some very fancy shots. That way, there are exploding barrels that you can certainly use to your advantage. This is pretty fun. I feel like doing 2D tactical is very tricky, and you could fail miserably at it, but they did a very good job with this one, and it got very tough towards the end too. You had a good difficulty curve. Very easy in the beginning, and very tough at the end. I'm going to give this one a slightly higher rating. I think I will go... I'll go right here. Not top tier B, but right below Ori. The last SteamWorld game that I have is SteamWorld Quest Hand of Gilgamesh, which I've reviewed previously. This is a really fun deck building game. I mentioned One Step from Eden before and Slay the Spire. I'm a big fan of deck building games in general. I think they're a lot of fun, and I know that they're tough to program and tough to do right, but I would like to see more developers give a shot at them. This one in particular is a straight up RPG deck building game that's very unique. I don't think I've played anything quite like it. There probably are other games like it at this point, but this was my first experience with one. I wish that it would have been a little bit more open. Like if they would have included an open world in this, it would have been a lot of fun, because otherwise the maps are very congested. Your character sprites are very huge for both yours and the enemies, so you run into each other a lot even if you're trying to avoid battle. But the mix and matching of the decks, each character gets 8 cards to add to the deck, and then you randomly draw 5 cards, I believe it is, at the start of each turn, and you try to make the best combination that you can to do maximum damage. And great game. Not super tough, just tough enough. I think it's only around like 20-ish hours or so to beat, so it doesn't overstay its welcome either. Recommend picking it up if you're a fan of RPGs and deck building. This is a great combination of the two. I'm going to go ahead and give this guy... I will go as far as... Ooh, do I want to do... You know, I'll give it the top of the B+. Not quite A, but definitely top B+. Next up, we have a game that I wish I would have enjoyed more than I did. That's Trials of Mana. This is a remake of Seikiden Setsu 3, which never came out in America. It's the third part of the Mana series that goes along with Secret of Mana. You might be more familiar with here in the States. Unfortunately, there's been this slew of remastered games that have come out in recent years where they just kind of put a fresh coat of paint on it and call it a day. And that's kind of what I felt about here. I mean, this is a newish looking game graphically, but it's definitely very much feels like a 16-bit game when you play it. The AI is just stupid. There's no nice way of putting it. It is dumb as a brick. You will just sit there in a boss battle just being like, guys, you have ample time to move out of the way. And you're just standing there waiting to get destroyed. And it happens throughout the game. And it got especially frustrating towards the end. It is kind of unique in that when you start the game up, there are 6 characters to choose from, and you can choose your own team of 3 out of the 3 that are available. So the story can change up quite a bit depending on which 3 that you use. It does offer some replayability, I will give it that. But man, this game did not do anything for me really. When it was over, I was kind of just glad it was over. It does have a class system, and I always appreciate class systems, but it wasn't that heavily utilized. It could have been a bit deeper than it was, but at least it tried to do a little something. I don't know. They could have done more as far as remastering this, though. I think I will be kind enough to it though to not give it a C-. Where do I want to put this? I'll put it right here. Between Bloodstained and Donut County. Back to the world of strategy and kind of bizarre strategy in Turmoil. This is a game all about the oil industry and finding your own oil, I don't know, land of oil, I guess. Basically in this game you're literally just trying to dig and pipe out as much oil as you can to make a huge profit and make tons of money for yourself. I don't know if there's much more to say about it than that. There are different points in the game where you'll go to a bidding process trying to find out where the most oil is on this grid of land, and then you'll proceed to try to work that land in a set amount of time using whatever tools you have available. It didn't take long for me to find this one tool that just creates an ever-expanding circle, and you can just put it anywhere you want in the ground, and it does cost a lot of money, but it uncovers a lot of ground at the same time, and then from there you can just go ahead and suck up all the oil and pretty much like win every round. I didn't have a lot of trouble with it at all. I might do a review on this one though, because it is pretty unique. I just was a little disappointed with how easy it got pretty quickly too, if you kind of know what you're doing. And I kind of just gave away the big secret, if you want to call it that, of the game. But still, you know, pretty fun. You do get bonuses for being able to suck up all the oil out of the ground at the end of the round. So I guess it's kind of the real challenge, is to make sure that you've you know, taken care of every little bit and made sure everything's been sucked dry. So oh well, I'm gonna go ahead and I think I will give this one. I'll put it at the You know, like it a little bit more than Chinese parents. I'll go ahead and put it there, on the lower end of the C+ category. Do you like Contra? Well, I bet you do. At least if you're an old school retro fan. Newer Contras haven't been all that great. The last one was horrible, but this game is Valfaris, and it is a very hardcore metal Slayer Metallica style shoot 'em up game, much in the vein of Contra, very much a spiritual successor to those type of games, and it is hardcore. It's a little easy in the beginning, maybe. Well, I shouldn't even say easy, but it's fair in the beginning, but it very quickly ramps up the difficulty. Luckily, there are a lot of checkpoints, and the levels aren't too long. You also get a wide variety of different weapons to use here. It's not like something like original Contra, where if you die with a weapon, you just go back to your little pea shooter. Here you do get a lot of weapons that you permanently have that you can switch in between if you reach one of the little weapon posts where you can make that kind of change. Not a bad game, but man, is it tough. You definitely have to be into running gun shooter type of games to really appreciate this one, I think, but it's still not bad. If you're looking for a Contra fix and you're getting frustrated because you can't really find it, you don't have to look any further than this. It is a very intense, very metal, very fun, bloody, gory kind of experience. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna give this one. What do I want to do with this? Maybe I'll give it I'll go top of B- with this one. Alright, coming up on the end here finally, we got Void Bastards. This is a very unique title, definitely one I will look at reviewing in the future. This is a first-person roguelike game, first-person shooter roguelike game, something that you don't see very often. So in this one, it's kind of got a dark comedic tone where you will take the role of a prisoner who's been sent to search out different materials to basically escape from your captivity. And if you can pull this off, you get out. You know, that's the idea, at least, that you've been kind of promised. And in the game, you'll go from ship to ship trying to get the major materials you need to get going and get on with your escape route. But all the characters are pretty unique. They have strengths, they have weaknesses. Like, for instance, sometimes you'll get a character that's a smoker, so they'll cough, and so like the enemies on the different ships will notice you because you're coughing. There are a fair amount of weapons. There's a pretty good skill tree. There's also a crafting system to the game where you can go about taking parts and putting them together. You're probably not going to get everything in the game by the end of it, which gives you some replayability if you want. I will say one negative was that I found out after a while, if you could get to the console in most of the ships where it would give you the entirety of the map, then you could find the rare items on the ship, and you could kind of grab those and get off the ship and just get on your way. Of course, though, as you're exploring the star system, you do have to worry about your food and fuel, so you got to keep that in mind as well. But I found that a lot of the times, unless you got really backed up by enemies and were forced to deal with them, a lot of times you could just make like a quick escape, quick in and out, snatch and grab, and get on your way. So slight issue with the design of the game maybe there, but still very fun and very unique genre mashing there. I'm gonna go ahead and give this one. I think this one deserves to get up here on the B+ list. I'll go ahead and put it. I'll put it right between Diablo and Forager. Alright, back to the first-party Nintendo games. We got Yoshi's Crafted World. This one was on its way to being released when I first got my Switch, and so it was kind of was looking forward to it as being my first new first-party Nintendo game. I didn't have a lot of hope for it. When I'd seen the trailers for it, I know that they were talking about how you could wear armor so you could absorb extra hits, and I was like, maybe this is more geared towards a little bit of a family-friendly, childish sort of audience. So I kind of anticipated that going into it, and it was very much like that. A lot of the levels are a little bland. Kind of the gimmick to try to get more replayability out of the game was that you would play the levels in reverse after you beat them initially, and I really didn't see a lot of value in doing that. I mean, unless you wanted to 100% complete the game, of course, then it was something that you had to do. But otherwise, I was like, this is just not really for me. There was one level I remember that was like a Halloween themed level where like a slasher killer would like run at you really quickly, and that was kind of spooky and memorable. But otherwise, it didn't have a lot of memorability to it, unfortunately. So I think I'm gonna have to unfortunately give this one kind of a low grade. I think I don't know. I liked it more than Mario Bros. U Deluxe, though, so I'll pop it right there, I think. Alright, last two. Let's finish with a couple of heavy hitters, and you might be looking at the list and noticing that a couple of big guys are missing here, and the next one up is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. I mean, what more needs to be said about Smash Bros. Ultimate? It includes every character from the past and then a whole bunch of new ones. They're still supporting it years after its release. We probably won't have the entire cast done until, you know, probably the middle of 2021, if not later than that. And it's such a simple pick up and play game. I mean, you could maybe deduct it points because it's a fighting game and you have to kind of be into fighting games, but every character's basic commands are the same. Yet they're varied enough that everyone's very unique in their own way. It's just absolutely one of the best games, certainly one of the best fighting games of all time. And this one, you guys probably know where I'm going to put this one. Got to go ahead and put it top tier. Very best game so far on the list. But with that being said, of course, there has to be one left that's very obviously missing. That is, I mean, does it need an introduction? Of course it does. And it's Zelda Breath of the Wild. It is maybe in my opinion, the only must-own game, regardless of what type of gamer you are for the Switch. I'm sure a lot of people would say there are a ton of other titles that you need to have too, and that's true. I'm just very critical of games, and this is the one that I would say, like, if you can only get one game on the Switch when you get a Switch, you need to get Breath of the Wild. I mean, hands down. Open world Zelda game, it does everything right that it had to do. I didn't have any real issues with it. I kind of wish there was a little bit more interesting stuff to discover while you're exploring. I felt like a lot of some areas were a little bit too barren for my taste. I got annoyed with the fact that it rained a lot and you would have trouble climbing mountains when it was raining. That was kind of a nuisance for me. But some of the other stuff that really annoyed people, like weapons breaking, that was never really an issue because you got so many of them. Like by the end of the game, you have such a treasure trove of weapons, it really doesn't matter anyway. Just an absolute amazing game. Of course, I'm like just everyone else waiting for the next one to come out whenever that happens. But absolutely, it's got to be the number one top game on the Switch. So there you go, everyone. That is my list. I hope that you've enjoyed listening to me rant about these games a little bit. Let me know, what games have I not completed that I should? I have played a lot more games on the Switch, but I have not beaten some, and I didn't want to put them up here. Two notable outliers are Luigi's Mansion 3 and Astral Chain. I just didn't really enjoy those games that much, to be honest. I didn't see them through. So, but let me know, what do you agree with, what do you disagree with, and what should I give a chance to that I might not have? Let me know in the comments below. Subscribe if you haven't, and check out the description below as well for my Twitch channel where I stream most evenings. I'll talk to you guys later on.